Hey everybody, today I will be reviewing Longlegs. This was directed by Osgood Perkins. Perkins is of course the son of actor and director Anthony Perkins, and I think that gives him some street cred in the horror genre inherently. Longlegs is one of those films that just seems to have a lot of people intrigued, and I think a lot of that has to do with the masterful marketing campaign, the teasers, the theatrical trailer, all that. I think it's some of the best I've seen in a while. But sometimes when your marketing is so good, that can be kind of a detriment because you'll watch it and think to yourself, there's just no way that the final product is going to be anywhere near the level that they are building it up to be. I always try to prepare myself in situations like that so I don't end up too disappointed. But yeah, that's really how I felt about Longlegs. You know, it looks amazing. I mean, like the tone and everything, the imagery in it is no joke. I mean, it's as committed as, you know, the trailer insinuates. You can also tell in the trailers, I think, that it's heavily borrowing from like other horror films, but other like serial killer movies of the past. The big one here seems to be Silence of the Lambs that everybody is comparing it to. But in my opinion, you should just watch Silence of the Lambs because that film is just better in every single way, and it's cohesive, it has flow, and it makes sense as a whole, and I don't think Longlegs does. It is clear that Perkins is very educated in the form. It's like he knows what he wants, he understands the mood that he wants to convey better than I think a lot of directors do, even in the horror genre. It's more the script that's a problem at the end of the day. I think it's kind of a mess, but at the same time, the way that it arrives at the conclusion, it's kind of unique. I can't say I was on board with it always or that I liked it, but there was something about it that I did find intriguing and somewhat refreshing. It just didn't commit to it all the way. I kept trying to want to find a rhythm to it. And I will say maybe the first half of the movie, it's like the whole time you're not quite sure where the movie's going to go. It typically has several different trajectories where you're like, okay, they're all different potentials, but it's like, which one are we going to choose? And there's something about that yes, is very interesting to me. I started to think, and I'm not kidding, I started to think, maybe this will be like The Florida Project, Sean Baker's The Florida Project. Obviously, they are completely different films. I meant more just kind of the structure of it. There's something about that film that almost seems aimless maybe in the first half of the film, but then it starts to layer in all of the emotion and the meaning, and once you have that bird's eye perspective, it's like, oh wow, it all makes sense. But with Longlegs, I'm looking for the angle or multiple angles. Is there a really strong surprise element that is maybe going to reveal itself in the third act of the movie, where all of this mood is going to get harnessed into something that feels meaningful and whole? But no, unfortunately, just the entire story, it's foggy at best, and it's often quite confusing. I'm also trying to understand what separates this film from other films of its type. Obviously, I said there's kind of an interesting way in which they kind of meander through the plot as we're getting to the end of it. And there's kind of an ambition that goes into all of that. So you can see him wanting to push beyond something, but I just don't think that the foundation is all there. It's a little bit too shaky for the ambition to have, you know, the legs that it needs. No pun intended. And when you are making a movie that is close to Silence of the Lambs or close to like David Fincher's Seven, it's like, that's kind of a problem too. It's because you're going to compare it to those films. And again, those are actually good movies, and they have solid foundations, and they have strong characters and, you know, strong motivations and a strong story. There is meaning in those beyond just the cinematic tactics. And when I look at Longlegs, it's like, yes, it has obviously a really great tone, but is the world building as strong as it seems? I argue no. This is a period piece, and yeah, I mean, like, you have the cars and, you know, just kind of the look of the rooms and everything. It's like you can tell that it is a period piece always, but I feel like it doesn't give you a lot of specifics there. It's like you might get maybe a stray picture of like Ronald Reagan or Bill Clinton every once in a while. But I think when you do have a period piece, especially when it's not that far away from the present, I think like this one, I like when there's some historical stickiness there. Another example I think is, you know, it's using a very bold song choice at the very beginning of the movie and at the end, and it even opens the movie with like a song quote. And, you know, it's trying to harken back to like the very cynical time of like when serial killers in the 1970s were very romanticized, and like pop culture, like the music of the time, it all kind of, everything was feeding into each other. It was very, yeah, cynical. But again, it's like, what is that thesis really trying to say tonally? It's like, I'm not sure. It gets lost. It gets very muddled in this movie. So I'm not sure exactly what stance it has. And as we get into the plot, we're getting more into like the devil, satanic type of stuff. But it's like, you know, again, it's like, how does that impact the characters and in turn the audience? And I'm trying to kind of piece it together as I'm watching it. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, it's like, okay, you know, so this movie is about repressed childhood trauma and like maybe memories that we've buried as we grow up, loss of innocence and realizing just how much darkness lurks in the unconscious minds of us all. And maybe this is a commentary on single parenting in America at a certain point in time even. So again, it's like you've got all these different pieces. I mentioned there's like all these different trajectories and I'm interested to see where it's going, but it's more out of fascination and not because I'm really like, you know, it's a really gripping type of film. But I think for all of that to work, it has to have a really emotional gut punch at the very end of the film as the payoff. And unfortunately, it didn't. I think the emotional stakes are just, they're not there. And as the movie progresses, I feel like the sloppiness of the story gets more and more apparent. And the main character, I mean, she's nearly taciturn. Now, at first, you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. She's mysterious. And, you know, it gives you hints as, well, there's a reason that she's like this. But I think she's still too passive in her own story for any of this to matter beyond basic intrigue, at least to the viewer, to me. Her self-actualization just isn't satisfying. And I wish that Perkins had worked more from like, yeah, the foundation of the characters and their motivation. So it's like when you start from there, and it's like you have, you know, something really strong at the center, then I think from there you can transcend and you can try to be, you know, more ambitious. That way you can shift all these, you know, different elements around where, yeah, it can unsettle you, but there's enough of a foundation where you know you're never going to fully go off the rails. I feel like I have to bring up Nicolas Cage in this movie just because, you know, he's the villain and he's also a producer on the film, but I found his presence in the film to be a big problem. He's an amalgamation of all these subliminal images we've seen of serial killers, you know, very Buffalo Bill in style. So it's like, you know, it's the androgynous thing. He's kind of mentally ill, unhinged. But I think when you cast somebody like Nicolas Cage, you're doing so with a very specific intent, obviously, and it's going to change the entire tone of your film, or could potentially. So it's like, if you're a director, you know why you're casting somebody like Nicolas Cage, and if you are Nicolas Cage, you know why you're cast. So now you're adding all of this, like, potential humor and campiness and eccentricity to the film, but it does not pop off the page. It's all very artificial and unconvincing for me. It isn't creepy, it isn't unsettling. It's none of what I wanted it to be. And I say this as a huge Nicolas Cage fan. I think Cage is at his best when you put him in a situation where it's like you have no idea where the scene is going to go. And maybe he has no idea where the scene is going to go. When it's too telegraphed, it drains all the suspense out of everything. And at that point, it's just a tired gimmick and it sags. I think if you wanted this to work maybe a little bit better, I think maybe the better thing would have been to kind of like keep Nicolas Cage under wraps, or maybe just don't make that the selling point of anything. Barbarian did something very similar where it was able to keep, you know, like certain cast members under wraps and all of that in a way that I thought was great. And it's like, I think that may have added a little bit more suspense. Maybe the payoff would have been a little stronger. But no, the intent here is too deliberate without really understanding the intent at a foundational level. Another thing that bugged me about the film was just how predictable it was. And yeah, obviously the movie does get, you know, quite silly later on. It's like, no, I didn't predict the specifics of that, but I just mean it's like you kind of have an idea where the movie's going to go very early on. I knew each time a new element was introduced in the movie, it's like I could see how that was going to pay off later. And yeah, that's not a good thing. This film is just not what it's being sold as, and sometimes that can be okay, but again, I just think that the buildup was so strong that, you know, it just didn't deliver. Anytime I see movie trailers where it's like, this is the scariest movie of the decade, or it's like the most disgusting, most grotesque movie of the decade, it's like, you know, it's not going to be. And that is exactly how they have been selling this one. And I can tell you, at least, you know, again, from my own perspective, I did not find it to be scary. You know, a couple creepy moments here and there, but nothing beyond that. It's really not that repulsive. And it definitely wasn't surprising in the end of it. Again, it felt very predictable to me. Something was just off and I wasn't feeling it. Would I recommend this film? Not really. I mean, like I said, it is beautifully directed, so maybe you might, you know, get some inspiration there. Maybe it might be worth a stream, but overall, I'm just like, there are so many better films in this genre that I think you could learn from. There's such better experiences, so I just say, you know, go for one of those. And that is my review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to plug my website as always. It is deepfocuslens.com. I'm an artist, I do commission portraits, and I sell prints of my work. If that is something that you're interested in, you can always go to the website below, and if you have a question about a commission or a print, you can always email me. My email is in the description box below as well. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to my patrons who are great. Guys, thank you so much for your support. Welcome to all the new members. If you are interested in supporting, the link for that is below, as well as the rest of my social media information. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.